Beetle Bruce, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty excellent. How are you? Thanks for jumping on here.
You're welcome.
It's cool to meet you.
Yeah,
Well,
you too.
to at least be talking in real time.
Yes,
Right.
yes. No more texting or emails or whatever. I can't even remember how we contacted each other. Maybe it was
I,
text. I don't know. Might have
yeah,
been email.
maybe because of Facebook or something. You maybe had some cool pictures of
Well,
yourself.
yeah, there was a time when, I had no idea. I'd never met you. And then all of a sudden you were like all over my Facebook and Instagram. You made and it was like, wait a minute, who's this person?
Why is the question.
Well, you did a good job of self-promotion, that's for sure.
What was I promoting?
Just, your overall studio recording and all that kind of stuff, it was just cool to watch.
Mm, cool. Well, you got a cool setup there. Tell me about it. What's going on back there?
Well, this is something that I've had going on since 1981. I actually used to have a proper studio space, commercial and all that. And as time's gone on, I basically just moved everything into my house because I'm, kind of semi-retired. I don't work full time anymore and such.
Lucky
But
you.
yeah, I mean, the challenge that I took on was, how do I create a working studio, um, in a space that's not designed for a studio?
Which has been
And
my whole life, actually.
yeah, yeah. So, a lot like you, I think your room is a lot more expansive and bigger than my mix room. But I've also got a drum room, and I've also got a regular, recording space that I've created. And
Nearby on the same floor?
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, it's out there,
Yeah,
and I don't even really need to use a talkback mic. I could just, hey, go ahead.
I know. Yeah, it's that close. My drums are over there too.
Yeah. So, um, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. Mostly what I do now is mix because everybody's got a laptop and Logic or Pro Tools or whatever it is they're using.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll just send me tracks because when they finish their project, they realize that they really can't figure out how to make it sound good. Even though the individual tracks might sound pretty good, don't have the skill to blend it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what I do.
Blending's always been one of my favorite things, like finding the way they enhance each other or the different tracks sit together. But I have been told sometimes, hey, your stuff doesn't sound like a record, it sounds like a demo because the instruments are so pure. And production has gotten to a place where it's like the producer or the mix engineer imparts such a sound that if it isn't full of tons of parallel compression and all kinds of studio wizardry, they're thinking it's not a today sound. And I don't think I have any interest in chasing too many of today's sounds unless something I think really fits one of my songs. I've been known to, try all kinds of techniques and then go, what did I just do? It's like I blew the song up and it's not the song anymore, but I got the
Right.
technique.
I I try to do whatever serves the song.
Yeah.
And, like say for example, if one of the few things that I do have that comes in and they actually record here, it's like a jazz trio.
Mm,
And they'll play everything live. And I'll
nice.
basically run everything through the console. They monitor off the console. When we play back Pro Tools with all of the faders at 0, that's kind of the mix. And then there might be some minor tweaking after that, but you're talking about using very, very few plugins and such because, in many cases, I might have gone through compression on the way in because I have a bunch of outboard gear and stuff like that. That's very
Yeah.
old school,
Yeah.
but that's where I started. When I started recording um, back in, the late 1970s, I actually, created my studio in 81 was the first time when I called it Squeezer Recording. But prior to that, I was still recording people, on a 4-track.
Yeah.
And,
A reel to reel.
just because I was the only guy that had a 4-track and, a few microphones. But, my original recordings were, one compressor. I had a spring reverb, it was very, very archaic.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to kind of pick and choose, all right, what do we want to put the compressor on? Well, if you track, you can put the compressor, you can use it on all the tracks. But if you're recording live, and I never really used mix bus compression back in the old days and such. So,
Yeah.
Now I try to still hit things on the way in and get, a more finished sound when I record so that when you play it back, it actually sounds pretty good. It's not just, a microphone plugged straight into an interface.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, pre-definition, it's just the way that I learned. And if you looked at my sessions, you'd say, gee, there's not a lot of plugins on that, maybe a little EQ, maybe a little bit of compression. I have been known to use parallel compression with drum kits and things like that. I mean, it just depends on what the song is.
Sure.
Most of the stuff that I do is younger performers, that are quote indie. I only record original music. If people want to make like country demos so that they can go play in bars or whatever, I'm not interested in that. I could do it if I just wanted to make money, but I'm really much more interested in, working with somebody who's got something to offer that's different.
Nice.
And
new.
A lot of the stuff that I do, I mean, it's really not commercial in the the strict sense of, pop commercial music. It's people that are out there trying to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And so when they send me tracks and such, sometimes they have a lot of plugins already on it, or they already have their sounds. And they're like, that's kind of what I want. I just want you to make it a little better. And other times they'll just send me raw tracks and say, can you turn this into a record?
Have at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and how did you learn? I mean, was it just constantly working at it and doing it, reading magazines? And because there wasn't much resources back in the 70s. I was
no.
trying.
Well, all right. So the way that most people did it is that you learn by doing.
Yeah.
So I was a first. I learned how to play the guitar at a very young age. My dad was a very good guitar player. And so I started playing, or at least picking the guitars up in the house at 8.
Nice.
And when I got to like grammar school and high school, I started playing at like folk masses and stuff like that. So at that point, I'd learned how to play 3 chords. And then in college, I started going to, open mics and such. And people started offering me, jobs to play my acoustic guitar. I had the Bob Dylan harmonica holder, and I was ready to go. And I did that for a long time. I made a living doing that for a long time.
Nice.
Playing 2 gigs a week, $50. Well, back then, you could live on $100 a week.
Yep.
Not well, but you could survive, and I would always mix myself from the stage. Well, then when I started playing in bands with people, 4-piece bands, simple, that type of thing, we would mix from the stage because you didn't make enough money to hire a sound person.
No.
And other bands would come and listen to us and they said, you guys sound really good. How are you making it sound like that? And so they eventually wanted to hire me to mix their band. So
Nice.
I got into mixing live bands in clubs.
Nice.
Nothing really elaborate, very, very simple, rudimentary by today's standards. But that's what I was doing. And then a job opened up with a national sound company, National Audio.
Wow.
And initially, I had like the C system, which was mono. It was small, and I'd go around and I'd work with, little club bands and things like that, people that wanted to hire a sound company. And then I graduated to the B system, which was still mono, but now I was working with acts that were famous, but they were on like the downside of their career. So I'd mix people like Ray Charles, B.B. King.
Wow.
Yeah, legends, but
Holy cow.
they made their legend many, many years prior. In the 1980s, they were still performing and playing live, but record companies weren't making records with them so much anymore.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of bands like that. My resume just goes on and on. People almost probably think I made it up, because it was like, well, how could you work with all these people? And it's like, well, that's what it was.
They were gigging.
Right.
They hired the sound company.
So
That's
the
cool.
guys that I originally worked with, I already knew the rudimentaries of, how to place a microphone, at least in a live sound setting.
Yeah.
And then I learned a lot of the different things about the processing, compression, and, we use graphic EQs along with the EQ that was on the board, and, speaker protection and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. And
Wow.
eventually I worked my way up to the A system, which now we're in stereo. And, the Allman Brothers, Doobie Brothers, Huey Lewis and the
Wow.
News. Yeah, I mean, because they hire the sound company and you go out. Now, many times you're out there and you're what
Yeah.
they call the babysitter. You're not actually mixing the band. You just get everything set up and you work with the sound man to make sure that they have everything that they want. But almost
Because you know the
always
gear and they don't
opening.
know your gear.
I'm sorry?
Because they know the gear. Because you know the gear and they didn't know the gear.
Yeah, they would just tell me, I want this on this channel and I want this on, and so you set it up for them.
Yeah.
But that gives you the opportunity of watching a top-notch live mixer, somebody who mixes some of the best bands in the world. You get to stand there next to them and see how they do things. And you can pick up, even if you pick up one or two little things every gig,
Oh, definitely.
it's an amazing amount of information. And most of the opening bands didn't have sound people, so I would always mix the opening band.
Wow.
And you're always told you need to keep it at a certain volume. You can't be louder than the main band and stuff like that. But,
Yeah.
I got to mix a lot of really good up and coming bands when I would mix the live band.
Cool.
So where the turning point was for me, I was with another guy and we were doing Jay Leno. So, one microphone in his hand and one spare microphone, just in case, And so pretty easy gig. And we got a call backstage and they say, can you have your sound system down in Long Island tomorrow? Because, we need to provide a sound system for Motorhead. And so we drove all night. We got down to Motorhead. And when I got down there, I was up on the stage setting up the monitors and such. And I asked one of the managers or road managers, where's your monitor man? And he said, oh, you're it. So I had to mix the monitors for Motorhead. And I mean, I'd never been around. I mean, they were so loud. I've never been near anything like that ever. I mean, it was just so incredibly loud on the stage. And, the first couple of minutes when they fired up at sound check, they're looking at me like, we can't hear anything. And I'm just like turning everything up and notching everything out and trying not to have the system just blow up and feedback. And after about 2 minutes of terror, things kind of came in to where they should be. And so they didn't kill me. I survived.
Did you have any help?
But after that, the sound company got good reports, about that show. So then they started having me working with all these metal bands.
Oh, wow.
It's like, oh, he can get the system loud. Great. And that's when I decided that, I'm going to go deaf.
Yeah. This is
I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I started talking to different people and reaching out. And there was a guy named David Chase who had a small recording studio, really good gear, automated board, the whole 9 yards. And, I just became like an apprentice. And that's how I learned, I did all the things that you normally will do, go out and get coffee, go buy a dinner, that type of thing. But while that was all going on, you learn the difference between, say, miking something up for a live setting as versus like miking it up for recording.
Mm,
what the different kinds of microphones. I mean, rarely would we ever use, say, like a ribbon mic or something like that
right.
live. It was all dynamic mics mostly.
Yeah.
We condensers for the overheads on the drums and things like that. But
Yeah.
so I had a whole new learning that I went through. And then the other big thing was learning how to deal with the clients when they came in,
Mm,
to make them at ease so that they would perform their best.
sure.
Because there's always a certain amount of pressure. Recording is expensive. And so they come in thinking, okay, I really need to knock this off as quickly as I can. And that's just a recipe for making mistakes.
Yeah.
So having people come in and putting them at ease, and having them feel like, don't worry about it, everything's going to be great, it's going to sound great. And so I was off and running. I worked with David for a while, and then I started my own thing.
Wow.
That's it.
Super cool.
Yeah, long
That's
story,
really
sorry.
awesome. No, I love it. I love it. It's what everybody usually wants to know, and everybody comes about it in a different way. I mean, for the longest time, I wanted to study with Phil Ramone, and then I even got his phone number from Elliot Shiner, and had called his office and stuff. And time went by, and then unfortunately he died. But I was always buying all the recording magazines and all the you know, watching anything I could if there was a show about it or behind the scenes or some of the things, different specials people would have. But, before YouTube, there was like very little out there. And then I think it was one day just on Facebook seeing an ad for Pure Mix. And I just thought, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for my whole
Right,
life
right.
is to be able to sit down with masters and see what they do and how they do it. And one of the first I watched was John Paterno with Robbie Robertson, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, this is what I've been looking for so long.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, there's so many great people that I like to listen to on YouTube. And I was learning some things from Mix with the Masters for a while, and some of those. But like you say, sometimes it gets into some music that it's so far away from the style I'm doing that it's like not helpful, and I can't even endure the time to listen to those kinds of songs and loud, crazy productions when I'm doing something so completely different here. So now I sort of hunt and peck for these different things. But I'm really grateful to YouTube and all those things, and so many generous people just in any subject, in any field, right? You can learn anything
Yeah.
off the internet now. It's a blast.
Well, I think you were a musician too, or still are actually. The grounding that you get playing with different types of bands and things like that, that kind of sets you up for being able to mix different types of music.
Mm,
And then when I was mixing live, especially when you're with a professional sound company, you just do whatever kind of music, is on the docket that night. So,
sure.
it could be a folk festival, or it can be jazz, or it can be blues, or, whatever it might be. And little by little, initially wasn't when I wasn't the primary mixer with the system, I would just kind of learn,
Yeah.
from the people that were doing it. Oh, that uh, set it up this way. This is how it works, how it sounds, things like that. And so when I went into recording, about the only thing that I'd never really mixed was hip hop.
Oh, well.
And I haven't really had a lot of people that have sought me out to mix hip hop. So I haven't really had a lot of opportunity. I did do one demo for a guy back in the early 2000s, and we used the drum machines and the whole 9 yards, and he was thrilled with it, but it never went anywhere.
Hmm.
Um, but it's one of those things where I've never actually had a real authentic, like, working hip hop group ever say, "Hey, can you mix our music?"
Right.
So, that's something that's escaped me. And at this point in my life, it's probably pretty unlikely that anybody's going to reach out and want to hire me. But, for something like that. But,
Hmm.
I guess you can't do everything.
Well, I think sometimes uh, if an artist is listening to the samples you've got, if they think, wow, you've done some really great mixes here in
Yeah.
all kinds of genres with different sounds, it's very possible you could do that. There's nothing keeping you from it necessarily. It's just if they have the imagination to know that if someone is really good, they can really help you polish your mixes and get your music sounding professional. So I don't think that would stand in your way. Maybe they're just not in that area, or you know.
Well, I'm in a region of the country. I mean, you know, in the you know the small mountains in the Catskills, and there's not a tremendous amount of hip hop around here. You know, when you
That's what
get
I
over
was thinking.
towards, say, New Paltz in that area, it's
Yeah,
you know, it's all about original music.
yeah,
Um, but you know, it's not about original music that's hip hop.
right.
You
Tell
know,
me
you
about
got to
the
get south of Poughkeepsie,
oh,
heading towards New York City.
yeah, yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Tell me about some of the faders and stuff I see behind you. What are these pieces of gear?
Well, this is a Soundcraft console from 1981. Um, it's made in England, completely analog, obviously. It's a console that I've had since I got it pretty much new in 1981. I actually
Awesome.
mixed BB King on this console.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's fun. But Soundcrafts back then were kind of regarded as a poor man's Neve.
Yeah.
And when you can't afford a Neve console, this incarnation of boards, this is a 400. The 400 was at one point the most widely sold console in the world
Wow.
because you could use it. They had live configurations and they had recording configurations. This one's set up with an 8-track matrix, so it's designed to be used with an 8-track tape recorder, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, I still have one back behind me over here. Um,
And is
and
that
what works really well with it is that the EQ on it is very, quote, British sounding.
yeah.
And so a lot of times, you know, I'll run through the console, you know, into Pro Tools
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, use the EQ and the, you know, the preamps that are in this console, and you get a very vintage kind of a sound.
Nice.
On the other hand, if I want more modern sounds, I have an AEA preamp that I use for my ribbons.
Oh, cool.
I have a blue preamp, which is pretty nice. That's got a tube in it. Um,
Nice.
and that's, you know, it's a more simple preamp, but that works out pretty well. I have a warm preamp, which is a copy of, you know, a quote American company. You know, so it's one of those things that I can get a lot of different sounds
Great.
or a lot of different, you know, inputs going on in there. Sometimes I'll EQ on the way in. Sometimes I won't. You know, just depends on, you know, what kind of sound I'm looking for. My main tool is the microphones. I have about 50 microphones,
Mm-hmm.
ranging from like super cheap all the way up to, you know, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And a plethora of, you know, uh, different types of mics. I've got some ribbons, tubes, et cetera, et cetera. And,
Awesome.
you know, I just try to figure out, all right, you know, at the recording stage, what's going to sound good on this. And if it doesn't sound good, I change the mic. Or if the mic's sounding pretty good, but not quite there, I move the mic around until it sounds better
That's great.
before I touch EQ.
That's great.
And that's one of the things that I learned, you know, in the live sound days was move the mic around.
Yeah. And it sounds like you were smart enough to know that you could still go through an analog console and then even into some interface as far back as even the 80s or 90s when things started getting into interfaces. I mean, I had a Studio Master Track Mix 32, and at the time there was no way, unless you bought all these very, very expensive converters, to go in and out. So
Yeah,
I didn't realize with my interface that I could have just taken those outputs and put it through to get it to be digitized, but at least get some nice stuff on the way in through the analog board.
right, right.
So I got rid of that, and then I had missed it ever since. So then I got this Audient a couple of years ago, which is analog, but I also have some converters now where I can come back and actually
Mhm.
mix through it if I wanted to. So yours is mostly for tracking, or do you have it?
Yeah, I'm mainly track now, and that's by choice. I mean, I have mixed. I can run 10 tracks back from my interface back into the console,
Yeah.
and as long as I'm monitoring, just the console, like when I do the turnaround to bring it back in to print it,
Yeah.
there's a latency, so it's out of time, and
Right.
you have to move it to get it back to where you wanted, where it originally was. But as
True.
long as I'm monitoring through the console, it sounds fine. I'm not having any problems with jittering or anything that you get
That's
coming
cool.
off of the interface. So the interface seems to be pretty solid in terms of that. But I don't use the console as much for mixing anymore, only because um, once the console's set, and you finish, like, mix for a couple hours, or you're like, all right, give my ears a break and walk away. You have to leave it. You can't
Yeah,
move on to something else.
I know. Yeah, that's
So
still the
in the
case.
box, if I track through the console, now I have the sound of the console on those tracks.
Right.
And uh, I know there's a lot of people that are out there doing it that way, and I just found that you know I like mixing in the box. I like the fact that, for example, I can have an LA2A compressor on 40 tracks if I want.
Yes.
Whereas mixing in the console, I have 6 compressors, and it's like, okay, that's
Decide.
all you get.
And so if you did a hybrid thing, you could have a little bit of both
You
plugins and
can, but
hardware.
now that starts to get pretty complicated. Now
It does.
now we're going down the road that like what you're talking about.
I know. I've been up in the tree, like, whoa, hooking things up
Yeah.
and trying to get things to work. And I'm like, boy, you've made your life super complicated for a songwriter who just wants to make albums.
Well, I mean, and I've listened to your albums. Your stuff sounds good. It's not like you're doing anything wrong. I think it's just one of those things where, as an artist, the way I look at it is that every single year, I'm still chasing this elusive,
Mhm.
making recordings and mixes that when I get done with them, I'm satisfied.
Exactly.
And generally speaking, I am pretty happy with what I've been doing. But every once in a while, you go back and you listen to something from like 4 or 5 years ago, and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But
Yeah.
you can't go back and remix everything forever.
No, and it's
It's a
fun
piece of
to move.
history. You just have to leave it there.
Yeah, it's nice to move forward and just carry on, really.
Yeah.
What's over your right shoulder there?
Um,
It's got faders, but is it that one of those
oh,
built-in
that's just a
recorders?
little sidecar that I used to use, all the time for extra channels just in case.
Hmm.
Um, it's a rarity because for a very small period of time, Fender, Fender guitars,
Sure.
they tried to get into the console business.
Oh, wow.
And so they made these consoles. And I was one of the few people that bought one. So I have it. It's
Nice.
rarely used anymore.
Huh.
And yeah, I guess it's the type of thing that if somebody said, hey, we got a, small little, you know, uh, band, would you be willing to come out and mix us live or whatever? We don't have any gear. I'd probably bring that,
Okay.
because it's
Right.
portable and,
Sure.
that type of thing. But it sits over there. And I was thinking about replacing it at one point with something better.
Mm.
You had a unit that we were talking about, and I decided not to go down that road. But and then my tape machines are back there. I have a quarter track, a half track, and an 8 track,
Nice.
and I still do use them.
Is the 8 track on half inch or 1 inch?
It's on quarter inch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And then the half inch.
quarter inch with Dolby.
Nice. And then the half inch was 4 track?
No, they're both 2 tracks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my quarter track, they're both 2 track. They used to be what I would mix down to.
Right.
because one spins at 7.5 and one spins at 15.
Nice.
So depending on the result you were looking for, or, because tape was expensive,
Yep.
spinning at 15, you use more tape and it costs more for the band,
Yeah.
you know? So sometimes it's like, 7.5 is good enough.
And this guy only goes at 30.
Well, yeah. And that's, that's that thing. You get such a clean, what you play back at 30 ips, if the machine is well maintained, it sounds just like what you put in it.
Yeah.
When you play back at 15 ips with Dolby, it sounds different. And that was the revelation for me, because I mixed into a hard disk recorder for a number of years instead of the tape. And it was like you're standing in your speakers with a guitar and you're like, okay, this is the sound. I love this sound. You record it, you play it back. And even though it was only 16-bit, which is compact disc level, when you played it back, it sounded just like what you put into it.
Wow.
Whereas when you recorded into tape, it always sounded different.
Yeah.
And then when you would go back and remix that. So, you'd play with pre-definition. It's like, well, if I EQ it this way and this way and this way, will I get the result printed on the tape that I want? And so you can play that game too, if you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
How have you kept yourself inspired, and what do you do instead if you're down some kind of rabbit hole and you're fed up? How do you recover?
Well, it's not like I get fed up, but there are times when you just don't have any work coming in, or you don't, it's and all of it just seems like everything comes in all at once, or you've got nothing. But I still write songs, and I still record my own stuff. So I almost always have 2 or 3 different projects in the works.
Nice.
Even if it's something that no one is ever going to hear, I don't care. I think it's just, it's kind of like that person that paints.
Absolutely.
And doesn't really care if they, they might show it to their friends, but it's not like they're going to publish it to the world.
Right. It wasn't ever about that. It was always about just wanting to write the songs and to capture them.
Yeah, so I'll just do really dumb things and write songs about, at one point I had a cat, and so I wrote a song called Kitty. And to this day, it's one of my daughter's favorite songs.
That's so great.
I
want to hear that one.
Would the rest of the world want to hear Kitty? No.
Well,
but
know.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's how I keep myself going. It's also practicing my craft, because when you've got a lot of time and you're recording your own stuff, I could pull out, like, for example, a guitar amp and stick 6 microphones on it.
Yeah, experiment.
In different positions, and then just hammer away, and then play them back. It's like, each mic by itself has its own quality. I wonder if we blend these two. What happens if we blend these two? What happens, and you just experiment and experiment and experiment until you finally get, well, that's different. I like the way that sounds. What are those?
That's
so
cool.
You draw, and now you have more tools for later on.
Yeah.
Same thing with it. I'm always remiking the drum kit in a studio, always.
Trying different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the Meta Alliance book with Frank Filippetti and Elliot Shiner and all the greats in there, Phil Ramone?
I haven't seen that.
Whole book just on recording drums.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's all the best minds and what they've been doing for decades. And here are the tricks, which, again, a book, a kind of book I had probably been asking for since I was 11 years old. And it's like, finally it's here. So great. But, a lot of my friends who do run commercial studios envy what you just said, because they don't have a chance to experiment enough. They have to keep working the projects, getting the clients happy and out the door so they can get the next one in, and they don't have time to explore.
Well, and there was a time in my life when I was working commercially where, I would not have been able to do the things I do now. Like I say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm older than I look. And all I really mean by that is that,
You
I
do
do have
have
a
a
lot
lot.
more time,
Yeah,
you know.
you've done it a lot. That's so great.
Well, I'm still doing it. Actually, I just mixed day before yesterday. I'm going to send it off after we get off of this Zoom here. It's a song that is going to be the ending credits of an independent movie.
Oh, I love that. Great.
And it's really cool. It's a really good performer playing guitar and singing. And this really great violin player who played 3 violin parts in stereo, in harmony.
Mm,
And they tell me that this guy plays on Taylor Swift records. It was recorded
sweet.
down at a studio down in Nashville. And most of the time when you get strings sent to you, they're keyboard strings.
Sure.
Even if they're really well sampled strings, they sound real.
Right.
They're still played on a keyboard. And to have an actual real mic'd, really great violinist,
Yes. To
that's
hear the
so much fun to listen to.
to hear the texture of those
Oh,
strings.
yeah, you hear the scratching on the bow, and stuff that when they're making the model of it, they're like, oh, we have to take that out. And I'm like,
So,
oh
no,
no,
you
I want to
leave that in.
accentuate that. I want to put that in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy with the result, and we'll send it off to the artists and the producers, and hopefully they'll say, yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, fun.
Can you say the name of the film or not yet?
I don't even know the title of the film. They sent me the last. I have the scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a gangster film,
Oh, cool.
and it's the one of the lead gangsters apparently just gets killed at the end. And so they start in on a close up of him, and they start to fade out, and that's when the music's violins swell and the song starts, and it starts fading away, and then the credits run.
There you
So
go.
that's it. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's great. Yeah. Well, we should both get our original songs in some of these films, all these independent films. So much music to choose from.
I've had people tell me, because I'm a closet classical fan.
Oh, cool.
And so every once in a while I will take, the different string sections and things like that I have that, obviously I don't play them. And I'll create something that's classic-esque on the
Mm,
keyboard.
yeah.
I'll just play everything and then mix it. And I've played some of these things for people, and they've said, you know, you should sell this. I could hear this in the background of a movie somewhere or something like that. I'm just,
Sure.
yeah. So I think maybe there's opportunities there.
Oh,
You've
sure.
got a lot of stuff that I think that would play in independent movies.
Do you think?
I think so. I mean, you might only get a 20-second snippet in there, in
Yeah,
a scene or something like that, but what the heck?
I know. There was one time I had read an article where Simon Callow was doing a film called The Ballad of the Sad Cafe. I would think it was in
Hmm.
People magazine. But when you finally read the article, even if it's a new issue, it was like 2 or 3 months back that they were talking about what they were just doing. So by the time I got a hold of him, they were already syncing to tape. And, the only spot they had left was the credits. And I FedExed a song of mine called Sad Cafe, which I've never even released, thinking they could throw that in over the credits, but
Yeah.
it didn't fit. So then by the time I saw the film, I went, no, that song was not right at all. Because I didn't know anything about the film.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I was kind of lucky with this one, in the sense that I was able to actually see the visual of what this would be playing over.
Nice.
And
But did you
the actual track itself starts with the guitar and the violins playing together.
Okay.
And I decided that because of the setting, I took the guitar out and only had the violins. So I
Oh.
went very Judy Garland.
And did you write this tune, or you said it was
No,
came from
no,
Nashville?
no. This came from, yeah, word of mouth.
And so
Hey, we
it's,
know a guy, that kind of thing.
yeah, and but it's someone else's song because they were creating it down.
Well, it's a song that's it might be in public domain, or they'll have to pay copyrights on it, but it's a song that most people know. It's just done in a very, very, very different way. It was kind of like a big band Frank Sinatra kind of a thing.
That
The
kind of
original. That's
arrangement.
what everybody knows. But doing it this way with a solo acoustic guitar,
Yeah.
and a vocal and three violins, it's a big departure from the original version.
Yeah. It's fantastic what an arrangement will do for a song, and it's infinite how you can arrange anything.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about I've been fascinated recently with how sometimes a producer is just there, or even the engineer or mix engineer, because now they're blurring all the terms and everybody's doing everything, which I've
Right.
always done, but it wasn't that way before. It was pretty clear cut, and it was nice when it was clear cut, at least for the credits on albums and such. But
Hmm.
there's that whole style of like capturing something and not putting your taste and your mark on it. And
Right.
then there's some fantastic examples of how people who have really made that song come alive. Like I have Basics, dry tracks to Instant Karma. And it's
Hmm.
like, it's nice. It's a great song. Still love it, but it doesn't sound anything like the hit record without Phil Spector.
Right. Right.
And yet I felt like a lot of Phil Spector's stuff on All Things Must Pass was way over the top. It's like I would rather hear some of the cleaner versions when they were rehearsing them that I have the alternate takes of than the finished mixes. But then Bob Clearmountain's Born in the USA mix
Yeah.
took that whole thing to a whole new level because they did a thing, I think it was on Mix with the Masters, where they showed you the dry tracks. And here was Bruce working so hard. And it was like the band wasn't there supporting him. It was
Yeah.
just like la la la, playing it in like an ensemble room somewhere, and it didn't sound anything again like the hit song until he put that gunshot sounding snare sound and
Right.
all those
Right.
fantastic things that just put it right over the finish line, like it's interesting because a lot of times somebody could ruin a song that way, and yet that whole taste thing, like I guess how much spices are you going to put into something? You wrecked the meal and we got to start again, or too many cooks, or it's perfect. Mm.
Well, I've always advocated, and it's not always possible, but the principal writer of the song, when I work with groups, a lot of times I'll like them to come in, and before I get too far along, I'll get it so it's like, okay, this sounds right now, it sounds like a really good demo. It's not a record
Mhm.
yet, but we're
Yeah.
getting there. And I like to have them come in and actually sit down and listen and say, okay, before I take the next step here,
Mhm.
tell me what you think. What do you like? What do you not like,
Mhm.
etc. And that next step is like when I start to put my stamp on it.
Do they ever give you
So where are we going with it?
a
Um,
reference mix to say, or
I always ask them to send me a reference mix, and I also ask them to send me mixes of like known bands that they like the way that that band sounds.
yes,
So now I know where their head's at,
yes,
you know?
you know what to aim
And
for.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, a lot of the indie stuff, it's very organic, very, very little, like you're not going to flood the vocals with a lot of reverb and delays and things like that. And, it's just a very simple form of music, a lot of them. But every once in a while, you'll get somebody that just wants to be really experimental and they just want like, this huge kind of sound,
Mm.
and they'll play you different things from different bands. And you're like, all right, I get the idea where you want to go with this. And I just try to take their rough mix and take it in that direction. But the one thing I don't want is I don't want the whole band here, because now you get turn my instrument up, turn my instrument up,
Oh,
and it's
absolutely.
just like,
Yeah.
I'm already 4 and 5 steps ahead of where you're thinking. I'm
Mhm.
just physically not there yet. I haven't done it yet, but believe me,
Right.
I already know what's going to happen here.
Nice.
And it's just, and the worst thing is when the singer is in to sing and you've got the band there, and now the singer's really nervous because he
Mm.
knows that if he sings one wrong note, the band's going to be down his throat.
Ah.
So it's like, you guys need to go to dinner. Just leave me here with the singer and,
Yeah.
come back in 3 hours and, it'll be done.
Are you familiar with Dave O'Donnell's mixes?
I don't, I, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, he's done a lot of James Taylor albums and some Sheryl Crow and
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I love when they can get this incredibly clean but precise, beautiful, pristine, but yet it's loud and magnificent. Like it doesn't sound cheap. There's just this incredible presence of the lead vocal. It almost
Yeah.
sounds like the whole mix could explode. It's so charged with so much urgency and fantastic sound. It's like, how are they making this happen? I talk to people, and some of my engineer friends just go, look, you're competing with like the best engineers in the world, with the best microphones in the best studios, with the best artists, with the best songs, with the best preamps, it's like, it's never going to happen. You're never going to get that sound. And then other people have said to me, that's got nothing to do with that. Of course you could get that sound.
Uh, yeah. I mean, I'm very much performance based.
Mm.
If you give me a band that comes in, they're well rehearsed and they can really play,
Hmm.
all I can do is screw it up. But the old thing that I used to hear all the time when I was mixing live is, we'd get a bad band that was the opener or something like that, and you do
Mm.
everything you could to try to make it sound, because there's an audience. They want to be entertained. You try to make it sound good.
Mm.
And we used to say that, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. So if the band is just not good, there's no amount of fixing that you can do.
No.
On the other hand, if the band's really good, it's going to sound good almost. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, through the years, I mixed a lot of things that they sounded great in the studio and they ended up on cassettes
Hmm.
being played in cars with compromised stereo systems.
Oh yeah.
So who knows what it's going to ultimately sound like. And if what you're looking at is the overall sound quality, I suppose that's one thing. You got to get a better system. But if what you're looking for is a great performance,
Hmm.
you can still hear that great performance on a compromised system with a bad cassette tape.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I have my methods to try to make vocals sound, better.
Have you
And I
experimented?
guess it's one of those things where, everybody's got their own way of
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Have you found a way to make a vocal incredibly present without sounding chorused and too much reverb and too much delay?
One, I'll use a compressor that like a 1176 or a DBX 160 or something like that, and set it so it's only going to knock off the peaks, like a 2-to-1. So it's not going to like be squashing, if you want to use that term.
Right.
But I just want to catch the very top so that, okay, then after that, I'll stick something like an LA2A that's basically just going to be compressing all the time,
Mm.
but mild enough so that like probably never more than 3 dB of compression.
Mm.
And it can be a Fairchild, it can be a LA2A, whatever you want. Or it could be a DBX 160 in the over easy setting.
Yeah.
You can get away with that. That's more or less just to kind of get the vocal to set where you want it to sit.
Yeah.
When it comes to processing reverbs, I'll use a very small reverb because I want to put it in a sense of space. So if you think about it, when there's nothing on it, because people tend to stand in front of microphones very close now, as opposed to, watch the old films way back when and they stood back here. So now when you're this close, you don't really hear a lot of the room.
Yeah.
Well, what I do is I put the room back into it. So the vocal, instead of being dead up the center, now when you put that room, it kind of does that. It's still in the middle, but it's just a little bit wider.
Nice.
Then from there, if I want to make it even that little bit more wider, I'll stick a plate on it. And you can either elongate the amount of reverb. If you really want to hear the plate, you can make it long enough so you hear the tail.
Right.
But you can shorten the plate up so that when the music is playing, when they get done with the phrase that they're singing, you really don't hear the reverb. But what you've done is the vocals even widened out that much further.
Nice.
Then if I really, really want to hear a reverb tail or something like that, you can put something else on there, a hall or, I'm still one of these guys that likes to use digital delay or a delay on a vocal.
Yeah, I like it too.
And I get the vocal sometimes in time with the music. Sometimes I'll just play with it so it's slightly out of time because you hear it better.
Yeah.
If the delay is exactly the same as the drum kit tempo, especially if it's on the grid, you can't hear the delay because the drums are going to play over it.
Yeah.
Kick snare is going to be stopping the bop, 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 that you're getting from a delay. So you can just play around with the delay. And there's oftentimes where you can take a vocal, now you've got it wider, but with the delay, you can also make it front to back deeper sounding.
Yes. That's super cool.
Yeah. And, I'll play around with it until I finally get it to the point where when you listen to the vocal in solo, you're like, wow, that's a lot of effects. Then you turn the music on and it all goes away.
I know. And it sounds like
gone.
nothing's there. Yeah.
Right.
So great.
So that's, yeah.
It's definitely part of the polish of making something sound like a record rather than just a little live demo just written on like the cassettes we used to use, capture the idea kind of recording,
Right.
That whole professional thing. Have you played around, I'm sure you have, with compressors, the way Jack Joseph Puig talks about, and how you can actually affect the groove between the attack and release times.
Oh, with the pump and release? Yeah, with drum kits for sure.
Yeah, because I have definitely messed up some of my own grooves.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I try not to over compress drums. I mean, that seems to be the big thing now is, let's saturate them. Let's make them dirty. I came from an era where everything sounded dirty anyway, because it was going into tape machines and, going through consoles and things like that. We strive to try to make things as clean as we possibly could in the recording.
Because there was
and
so
the
much
cleaner the recording, the better.
Because there was so much harmonic distortion.
Yeah. So I try to just, get the drum kit so that it just sounds, big and nice and round and clear.
Yeah.
And then if the act, or the people that are, paying me to mix it, if they want it to be more compressed and dirty and saturated, I can do that. But I try not to. I usually like to let the drums, especially if they're really well recorded drums.
Right.
And, on the other hand, every once in a while, I had a band that they wrote great songs. They were marginal singers, they weren't fantastic, but they were good. But I thought their songs were great. And they recorded the drum kit with SM57s.
Nice.
And an AT2020 over the top. So, $100 microphones.
Yeah.
And I said, there's really only one way to go with this. And, I really dirtied it up and saturated it and it made it huge sounding. And in the context of the mix, it sounded great. But, when you played it back in solo, it was like, man, that's a real dirty sounding drum kit. Well, the mastering engineer, when he got it, he was like, what's on that kick drum? And I said, an SM57. He's like, I have never heard an SM57 sound that good. And I was like,
You could tell
well,
that there was something completely different about it.
well, and a lot of the sound of that kit was the overhead.
Yeah. And
So
they must have been
just
tuned well, played well, and in a good space.
well, no, it was in like a living room. So it was a
Oh,
bad space, but it worked for what they were doing. I mean, it just worked. Everything came together.
yeah.
3 of the songs on that album got played on regional radio.
Oh, that's great.
So they became kind of like, semi-popular. Good
There
for
you
them.
go.
Yeah.
I think it's a gigantic playing field. I keep saying that over and over again. It's like almost anything goes, from absolutely horribly recorded to fantastically recorded. And everybody's listening to everything in between because their
Yeah.
band that they like, that's what they have, and that's fine. But, like for me, striving after some of these things we're talking about and learning more and more has been super exciting. Um, what about, like, I heard from Whiteseastudios talking about looking at a graphic EQ, not a graphic
Mhm.
EQ, regular EQ on the master bus, and seeing that the levels were way, because he does mastering for some folks besides
Mhm.
tracking and or mixing, and he was talking about how the low end was like billowing out. It was way over minus 36 peak, minus 24, even up higher. Some of it was going
Mhm.
over zero. He was saying, if I could just tame these things, then I could make that thing sound like an actual real record. And I thought that was such a great guideline, because I didn't get a chance to record in professional studios or be an engineer or an assistant, and so sometimes you don't know how much you're actually capturing, because if every
Yeah.
instrument is gigantic and you're not taming it down, or you're not high passing and low passing, you don't even know sometimes how much is there, because your
Yeah.
speakers aren't representing it. They're not giving it back. And some of the other amazing engineers I've been speaking to just said, I've never heard of anything like that. That's ridiculous. And I think it's because those engineers were working on beautiful Neve consoles with fantastic bands, capturing anything they wanted and having a professional mastering engineer take care of it. But
Yeah.
now a lot of us are mastering for ourselves. You have to think about these things.
Yeah. I mean, the rooms that we work in have an awful lot to do with the decisions that we make, because what you're hearing, if you're in a big room with high ceilings and, you don't have any boundaries anywhere as near your speakers, you're mainly just going to hear the speakers,
Mm,
in near field anyway. I'm in a smaller room here, so I've, over the years, little by little, I mean, it seems like every year goes by and I make a small sonic improvement to try to make the room as neutral as possible. And
mm.
I'm mixing with, right now, my near fields are Neumanns. And I don't mix real loud because it's a small room. They always tell you that 85 dB. It's like, well, that's in a bigger room. 85 dB in here would kill me.
I know it's too
So
loud.
I mix it a lot quieter as per recommendations. And what I basically do is in a lot of ways, I take the room out of the equation,
Hmm.
because all I'm listening to for the most part is the speakers. Now, the console does affect the way that it sounds and such, but I've gotten to where I can hear what comes through these speakers and I know how that's going to translate elsewhere.
Nice.
But it's not unusual for people to put a lot of low end, in their recordings and not really realize that it's there. And one of the practical considerations with having a lot of low end, like real low end, like below 30 hertz, is that if that stuff's down there, when you try to play it on a system, or say a car stereo or whatever, that system will try to reproduce that stuff and you can't hear it. So it's going to eat up all the power in your system trying to reproduce stuff
Yeah.
you can't hear.
Yeah.
So mastering engineers will high and low pass,
Hmm.
at least at 20.
Yep.
I usually if I'm doing something for somebody, I'm not a mastering engineer by any stretch, but if somebody says, can you bring this up to broadcast level so that we can play it back when you hear what it's going to kind of sound like on the record? I'll use isotope, and I high pass at 30 only because, tape machines didn't really go below 30 too much. Good ones, maybe down to 25, but you really didn't get anything below that anyway, other than rumble.
Wow.
So I'll pass at 30, and I think it makes it sound punchier.
Yeah.
And since it's not going to be a final version, it's just for them to listen to. What the heck?
I had to laugh earlier when you were talking about how each band member would say, make me louder or make me louder. If I'm playing all the instruments, I'm doing that with myself. Oh, no, this should be loud. No, this should be loud. And then before you know it, everything's way too loud and you're bringing it all back down again.
Yeah.
I also like doing a lot of my own background vocals. And I find even if I'm switching microphones, there are parts of my voice that I'll find super irritating. And if I don't notch out those frequencies, they're building up. So now there's tons of it. It's like, no wonder you think you don't like your voice, but it's not that at all. It's just that you have too much of a good thing in the same place and you've got to tame that. So
have you ever...
Sarah Carter's got a great YouTube channel, and, she was reinforcing the idea of notching out all kinds of things, resonances that aren't serving each sound. And I thought, oh, thank God for you, Sarah.
Well, one thing I always do for the most part, and not everybody does this because it takes time to set it up. So I'll set up 2 mics to begin with. And if it's going to be one person like me or a singer that's singing into the main mic, we'll record the lead vocal. And it's like, all right, we're going to do backgrounds. I'll switch the mic so that it's not exactly the same sonic signature.
Yes.
But the other thing that I think is a lot of fun, and this is something you probably have heard before, the Michael Jackson trick. And the Michael Jackson trick is he'll sing a part and it'll be maybe that far from the microphone. So that's the lead vocal.
Oh, yeah.
Then he's going to sing a backup to it. He takes 1 step back.
Yes.
So in order to do that, well, now they have to turn up the mic a little bit more to get the level, which means they're going to pick up a little bit more of the room. Yeah. And so at each successive background, take another step back, another step back, another step back. Eventually he's, 4 feet back from the mic. Well, you got a lot of room in there. And everybody's like, well, how do you get that presence of the sound of them singing in a room? It's like, well, there's one way.
That's great, because I don't sing that loud.
Yeah, and it does work, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Singing on the mic off access.
I like that too, yeah.
That's going to give you a different sonic signature, that type of thing.
I was doing a clinic in one of the recital halls at Berkeley. I was on stage singing and playing and talking about music with a bass player friend of mine, Jeff Song. And we were speaking to a full audience, and there were 2 stereo mics facing us, separated, like not X, Y, but they were apart, and they were in the middle of the room. And when I got back the recording of the event, it was fascinating to hear it from that perspective, because the mics were in the middle of that space. The stereo image was reversed because they were looking at the stage, whereas I was on the stage. And as I was talking to different people, I could still see where they were sitting because of the stereo image of those mics. It was fascinating. And then there were people behind the mics. And to hear the difference between the folks who were sitting in front, who were sitting near the mics, and then who were sitting behind, it was like, this is really cool. This is real acoustics, So I would do that. I would put mics in the top of stairwells and record the cello from way up there besides close. And I was having a real cool time with that.
My first studio, there was a stairwell that, because it was up on the 2nd floor. And we used to stick guitar amp down at the bottom of the stairs and put a microphone up at the top of the stairs. And you get some pretty interesting results with that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, some of those early magazines like Home and Studio Recording and stuff, I mean, they would laugh and say, put a mic in the kitchen or open up the dishwasher, put the mic in the dishwasher, or even the
Yeah.
Don Was sound, right, where he was recording one of Bonnie Raitt's tunes on Fundamental Things. They took this tiny little amplifier and stuck it in the bathroom. It's just fantastic, quirky little cool things that sound so great with a band.
Yeah. Yeah. I draw the line though at putting a condom over a condenser mic that's really expensive and dropping it down into a jar of water so I can get an underwater sound.
It's like, no.
It was they were gonna try that for Yellow Submarine, and it was just like, what does John want now?
Yeah, right. Or swinging him around the studio, like put him on
Well,
a big,
yeah, exactly.
just lay on the floor.
But when you have an endless budget and four guys that all they want to do is get something different each time, then you end up doing
Endless,
stuff like that.
yes,
Yeah,
endless questions and curiosity. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Well, what are you working on now? Anything that you're experimenting with and still trying to find the best levels for, or miking techniques, or is there anything pulling your curiosity in that experimenting direction?
Well, aside from like right now, my drum kit's probably got 12 mics on it, and the idea would be to record them all at the same time, and then some of them won't get used, but they're there just to see what would happen. So mics that are pointed in in a direction where they wouldn't be like having one pointing straight down at the drummer's lap that is really not going to pick up. It's going to be a mono recording, and it's like, all right, so if we compress the heck out of that, and
Mm-hmm.
if we do different things to it, what will that do to the overall tone of the drums?
Yeah,
And the idea is just to experiment with it and see what comes out of it.
that's fun.
The other thing is that at Christmas time, I was given a virtual microphone plugin. So I've been playing with that,
Hmm.
and I have to say that in some contexts, it works pretty good. And the thing that's interesting about it is you record the track, with the modeling microphone, but then when it comes time to mix, you call up the plugin and you can just change the mics. And would I rather have a real U47 as versus the model of a U47? Well, of course I would. And I have I have all the classic mics in made by other manufacturers. I don't have Neumann's, but I've got a 47, I have a 67, I have an 87,
Nice.
I have a C12, blah blah blah. So I have mics that approximate what the originals did.
Yes.
But being able to just kind of click a button and switch them back and forth, it's like, oh, what would this sound like on that? What would this sound like on that?
That's pretty
So
fun.
I think that for a lot of people that don't have a lot of money, that are really looking to make good recordings, I think a lot of that's coming. I think that a lot of the AI that, I don't want people to be out of work, but I think that more and more and more, people are just going to use AI to master.
Yeah.
You're just going to let the computer do it. I don't agree with it, but I think it's coming.
Possibly. Yeah.
One thing I'm categorically against is the fact that they model somebody's voice so you can have like Taylor Swift singing your song,
Hmm.
because it's like an AI thing.
Right.
And I just don't agree with that. I mean, that's completely stealing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time, you couldn't use anybody's name or likeness. My God, you shouldn't be able to use somebody's voice.
Right.
And
Right.
a lot of things people have sent me said, look, it sounds like John Lennon or it sounds like Paul. It's like, I know their voices so well. There's no way that sounds even close to one of them for real.
Well, with AI, the way that it's going, you would be able to you'd be able to sing with your voice and then throw the plug-in on it and you'd be John Lennon.
Well, that's what I mean. What I've heard so far, they haven't gotten it yet. They haven't perfected. It's
Trust
coming.
me, they will.
It's coming.
They will.
Yeah.
And there will be some people that think it's great and they want to use it. I mean, it's, you go back to the early days of hip hop
Mm,
and they sampled, you know, finished albums, Eddie Van Halen's guitar,
right.
you know, and people were just like all up in arms, like, oh my God, you've stolen my music and this, that, and the other thing. And now I don't think anybody even cares anymore. I mean,
Wow.
samples that I use, I pay for.
Yeah. What modeling mic plugin were you talking about?
Um, it's made by Slate.
Oh yeah, they make great
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. There's a bunch of them that are out there that I've seen at conferences. I go to AES whenever it's down in New York City and things like that.
Mm,
Sphere is supposed to be very, very good. Well, at this point, I mean, it's really hard to find bad gear now.
yeah,
It really is.
I know.
We live in a day and age where everything works pretty well. So, I think Audient makes, or not Audient, Antelope makes a
Mm,
modeling system that is revered to be pretty good. I think the biggest difference is, whose mics are you modeling? And
yeah.
when you get done with the modeling, do you tweak it to make it sound that little bit better? I mean, I've always thought that Slate's models always sounded almost like super versions of what they modeled.
Mm,
So I think they might be tweaking them just slightly. And then whereas, for example, like you know, Waves models of things, they have their own sonic signature. And, to me, it's like once you use it and it's in a mix, nobody's going to pick out, nobody, it's like, what compressor did you use?
yeah.
Nobody that listens to music cares about that.
No. And then even if you had two U87s or 47s or 67s, they don't even sound the same.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the worst thing in the world is to stick a really, really great, like a U87 on somebody who can't sing,
Oh, I know.
because now you have a really great version of this bad vocal.
Absolutely. Have you ever tried this acoustic guitar miking technique? I recorded a song of mine called Bellabye, and I
Hmm.
had a condenser facing roughly a few inches from the 12th fret on an angle, like is common. But the
Hmm.
second one, I had seen a thing on YouTube where the guy had put the mic up over his shoulder, coming
Hmm.
from behind. So it was like at
Hmm.
ear level, but over the top of the acoustic
Facing down
guitar,
on the body.
facing it down. Yeah. So that it was like what your right ear hears. And that
I've,
space between singing into a U87 and having two Sputniks here, it was
yeah,
like the most amazing thing. I just made sure it sounded balanced and that the voice was centered. And of course, the voice. I mean, all three microphones were picking up everything, but the
hmm,
combination was just so spacious and nice. It was like, ooh, air. This is great.
I've done it where I've put the microphone facing down, but over the neck where the person's playing. You hear all
Yeah.
the string, you hear all the string squeaking and noise and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
it makes it sound very, very real. Of course, you might not
This is
want
not a
that in your
sample.
recording, but
Right. It
it's
depends.
pretty
I know.
cool. It's pretty cool. No, I mean, recording an acoustic guitar, if I want stereo, I'll use ORTF, the French method. So the two mics are, it's a very specific distance the caps will have to be apart and the angle that they're at or whatever. And then I just put that in front of the
Oh,
mic, in front of the guitar. And what ends up happening is instead of the guitar being like dead center, it's still in the middle, but it's wide.
hmm.
And then you play with the panning to move it,
Nice.
or you play with the faders to move it because it's on two tracks.
Yeah.
That works pretty cool. I like that. And the thing that's great about ORTF, if you do it right, it collapses the mono perfectly.
Oh, wow.
So it's really in great phase,
Nice. I'm going to check that one out for sure.
or polarity, I should say.
My very first mixer I have in the other room, it's the TX AX20,
Hmm.
and it was a 4-to-2, so that I could take
Okay.
my 4-track reel to reel to the cassette deck. And you only
Hmm.
had a choice of left, right, and center.
Yep.
And then I found many years later that that actually was a thing, that people actually recorded and panned things just left, right, and center, like nothing in between these middle places. And God, it's just so amazing how many different things you can do. And I loved playing with the 5.1 in Logic, and I put
Okay.
5 of the same speakers around the room, and
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to capture it, to bring it out to the Acura to hear it in the ELS surround sound system. And there was nothing to capture it on. I was so disappointed. It's like I
Oh,
could only listen to the demo that came with the car, and I can only listen to this one, the Love album, because it was recorded in 5.1 and gave you a separate disc. It's like nobody knew how to encode or decode or give it to you for
right.
consumer playback. So I'm thinking the same thing about Atmos. Everybody's going crazy about Atmos, but it's like, first of all, it's gigantically expensive to set up. And then even if we were able to record that stuff in our own studios, what would we catch it on and play it back on? You'd have to only listen to it in your own studio again.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
mean,
It's only
I
working
think
in movie theaters and sound bars if they have that capacity.
it'll be interesting to see. I think probably, long after I'm doing it, but the whole idea of immersive audio, and it will be interesting to see if anybody can ever come up with headphones that give you a three-dimensional, like it puts you in the middle of the sound and the
Yes.
sounds in front of you and behind you and all around, as opposed to stereo.
That's what they're working on.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
if they
that's
can
gonna be
do
the easy.
that, then you don't need to have 10 speakers in a room, because
Right.
most people can't afford that and they're not going to do that.
No.
That's great for movie theaters and museums and places like that,
Yeah.
but the the mass, listening audience wants it to be as simple as possible. And it's kind of like the video games where you put the glasses on and
Right. That's what they're
now puts
comparing
you
it
in
to.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who
And those are
knows
pretty
if
cool.
they'll be able to come up with it or not.
Yeah. I think they will. I think I was listening to what's his name, Masters, Andrew Masters. He was talking about that yesterday. That they were pretty close to that. There was different companies he was working with or listening to examples from, and they were in an Atmos studio.
Hmm.
Yeah, Andrew Masters. He has a video. He was there in a friend of his studio's epic home studio, the basement converted into an epic home studio.
Yeah.
They were talking about all that technology and those headphones and different companies working on the headphone things as we speak, I think.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. Mm,
Yeah. I mean, it's there's a lot of people out there now that are working with headphones. It was always the no, you can't mix on headphones, blah, blah, blah. And I've
I've always
always
loved it.
checked all my mixes on headphones and things like that.
Yeah, because it's
And,
fun.
companies like Sonar Works that are out there that they model your model, your headphones so that it gives you a flat responses versus the way that the headphones were designed.
Yeah,
I don't, that can be good and bad, I guess, but
right. I
um,
remember
people are
George.
coming up with great mixes on headphones.
Yeah, I've always checked on headphones too, and all different kinds because I've always enjoyed listening on headphones, going into the music, probably for
Yeah.
that submersive experience, because it matters to me that it sounds exciting when you put the headphones on and there's something to listen for
Yeah.
and interesting things are happening. And I've always enjoyed when people have said they've liked listening to my mixes because they sound good in headphones. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's super
Well,
cool.
my first good recording speakers, the first ones I ever had, and people will laugh, but they were NS10s,
Oh yeah, I still have them.
the bookshelf speakers from the 80s, right?
What? That's not an NS10.
And, I did the obligatory, put the tissue paper over the tweeters and all that kind of stuff. And they were great if you wanted to, hear what was going on in the mid range.
Yes.
But the only way that I could really ever check what was going on in the low end was to use headphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'd listen to something that was commercially released and say, all right, what are the bass and the kick drum doing in this song? And then what does mine sound like?
Right. And if
And
it's
you almost always have to fix something.
flabby and too much, and again, if it's blowing up and you don't know it, you don't even know what frequencies to tame, but you can see it on an EQ, it's like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Pull it
Yeah.
down. Once you see it, I don't know, it's still a matter of taste, knowing what tools to use at the right time and what things are going to be helpful, whether it's your ears picking up on the problem or your eyes picking up on the problem. I don't think that's uh, a better or worse situation. It's just catch the problem and fix it.
Well, and the one thing I think that, I still prefer to see use real, human beings for mastering is that
Yeah.
it's what they do. They work within all the different genres. They know what works and what doesn't.
Right.
And using like AI, it's just going to use a modeling of, kind of like, well, this kind of song usually sounds like this.
Yeah.
So you're going to get more of a generic, and it might sound pretty good. I mean, some people might really like the way that something like that sounds, but I think that if you want something that's unique, to your piece of music,
Yes.
trusting it and giving it to somebody, who you do trust, and there's different mastering services that are out there that, you use one and you're like, well, that was pretty good. But then you use another, it's like, wow, that was really good.
Well,
And you just keep going back.
someone who's actually listening and feeling your music to give it the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they're knowing how to complement it and take it further the way you just took it further for their mix. That's super
Well, and
important.
AI would take that billowing low end you're talking about, and it would just flatten it right out,
Yeah.
or dip it down below zero.
Yeah.
It's going to cut it down by 16 dB or something like that.
Yeah. And
And
that's
a mastering engineer might be like, all right, how obviously they intended for the low end to have a quality to it. How can I work with that and still make this so that it's going to play back on all systems and be pretty good?
yeah.
And there's compromises, and they'll get you there.
Yeah. I've always loved the results. I've often used Jonathan Wyner at mworks, and
Hmm.
I remember bringing in one album that had 16 tracks, and one song he said, "We're going to just leave this one completely alone." And I was so disappointed. It was like,
No, you should be thrilled.
I
It
was like,
means you
why
did
am I
such a
paying
good
you so
job.
much?
It doesn't need to be mastered.
Yeah, that one doesn't need to be mastered. It's like, but I want you to make it better, And then there's only so far they can make it better. So then
Yeah.
I stopped using mastering engineers, but I think as I had gotten better at mixing, a lot of my stuff would have sounded better had I used a professional mastering engineer. I almost went out to the Netherlands to
Hmm.
visit Whitesea and his friend George, because George is this fantastic. George Konings is this amazing, tasty, artfully beautiful musician who masters, and he even masters stuff online. But I wanted to be there, so
Yeah.
I almost took
Yeah.
my new album Snowcake out to the Netherlands and said, I want to sit there and watch him master this. And I thought, you're insane.
Well, I've been lucky enough to be in mastering sessions, and
Me too. Oh yeah, I
if
always
you
go.
go there expecting that they're going to be, doing all this magical stuff and cranking on knobs, and I mean,
They're
it's
not.
very subtle,
Yes.
you know, especially if the mix is good. And the big thing there is, you know, when you walk out of there and you listen to what you gave them as versus what's going to go out to the public,
Yeah.
and you listen to it on compromised systems and in a car and on headphones or whatever, their version translates to everything for
Right.
the most part. Your version sounds great in your studio,
That's
and it
it.
might
Right.
sound pretty good in a couple of other places, but most likely doesn't sound good everywhere.
That's quite true, possibly. But it's probably because of those resonant frequencies that I didn't tame that they knew to tame. Right.
Well, their room is a lot better than yours and
Yeah.
mine and everybody else's.
Yeah. Well, I just started teaching a bunch of music production and engineering classes at Berkeley.
Hmm.
And, I've been teaching there in the guitar department since 1984, but it was nice to be recruited to go into that department. And they have a mastering suite that Jonathan Weiner set up and a few
There you
others.
go.
And I thought, okay, this is the place to test everything. So
Yeah.
this whole past semester, I was listening to all my mixes and questioning my ears at home and what my setup was giving me and what I thought I was hearing and how it was translating. And I started making all these changes. And then I was chasing my tail, going insane, going,
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. And it turned out that my students were going, no, no, don't change anything. They said one of the drivers blew on one of the big mains and they only
Oh,
replaced it, but they
geez.
didn't replace both. And you're not getting the right information. I'm like, no wonder it sounded like the regular bass frequencies at about 100 hertz were like too far back and this was too far forward and everything was brittle. And I was like, God, I'm like deluding myself. I thought I was okay at this. What's happening? And it
Yeah,
was
you
because
can.
I kept changing what I had, trying to make it sound good there, which was impossible.
Yep. Yep.
And Fab DuPont again would say to me, trust your ears, trust your ears.
Well, and ultimately, the way I look at it is that if I'm mixing something for somebody else and I like it, that's the first step.
Definitely.
But what it's really got to come down to is that they have to like it.
Yeah.
They're the client, give them what they want.
Hmm.
And even if they say, well, we should do this or this, and you don't agree with it, it's like, yeah, but that's what they want.
Oh, sure. My brothers are both graphic artists and they have to do that all the time. And most of the time, they probably don't even want to put their name on it when they're done because they're like, they didn't listen to half the ideas that I had. And now subpar work is leaving with my name on it?
Well, you know, in this day and age, if you can get your name on an album credit for mixing it, you're lucky.
I know because there's hardly any credits anywhere.
They don't put credits on, they don't give you credit.
Yeah.
It's my website, I've got a bunch of pictures of a bunch of different albums and things like that. And I did set up a page to put sound, like examples and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I just turned around and said, you know what? Uh, all that stuff's easily found, on YouTube and Spotify. And all these bands have all their albums on all the streaming services.
Mm,
If people want to hear what it sounds like, they can just go there and listen to it.
good idea. Yeah. Take up less
So I
space.
just don't put it
Yeah.
on my website because I don't need to.
No, I just put the credits.
And it's, I mean, I'm not getting work from my website anyway. It's not
Yeah.
like people are seeking me out that way. It's all word of mouth,
Yeah. The best stuff is,
you know?
and I don't really think we have much to fear with any technology or advancements in what's happening in AI or any of those things. Because like any other tool and like any other
Mhm.
device or invention, there will be amazing, big hearted people using the technology for the good. And there will be some people using it for evil. It's just the way the world is ever since the beginning of time. And if there's some ways that those tools can benefit us and they become affordable, maybe you and I will be using certain things to our own advantage. But
Yeah.
until then, I don't see any reason worrying about it or fearing it. I remember when they were fearing synthesizers and they were fearing uh,
Yeah.
in the guitar department, there was a big meeting when tuners were for sale. And they were like, no, these kids have to learn how to tune by ear. And it was like, of course they do, but they can't hear the difference yet. So when the light says it's sharp and the other one says it's flat, this is a good thing. They need something to help teach where their ear is so that they can narrow down this is actually in tune.
Well,
But
and
some of them,
tuners are an industry standard. So I would think that you'd want to teach them about that too.
well, at the time they weren't. They were brand new. And again,
Ah,
the guitar department was fearing it, like, oh my God. And you just it was like fearing laptops and stuff like that. I'll never use a computer, I heard one of them say, and it's like, yes, you will.
I can remember when digital music first started coming out, compact discs and things like that. And
Mm.
I was still recording on tape at the time, but I became a very early adopter. And I still have it. It's up in that rack up there. It's a Sony PCM unit.
I have it down there.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had a Toshiba
And
one that did it all in one, which was nice.
yeah, so you used a
VHS.
videotape.
Yep.
Yep. And
I
then
still have
that's
masters.
where ADAT kind of came from, that whole thing.
Right. And then I had 4 ADATs.
And I would record through tape, but I would use the PCM unit. That's instead of putting the master on another tape, which is now it's another generation down, I
Right.
would put it on the the ADAT, so to speak. So you have a digital copy of it.
Bring it back.
And I was doing that really early on. And there were all these people that I knew. There was a place down in Ithaca, New York, that it's no longer there. I don't believe it was called CAF Audio. And the guy who was the engineer down there was pretty well revered. He'd won some, different accolades and things like that. And he was one of these guys that was like, yeah, I don't really like that digital stuff or whatever. But then I kept telling him how good it sounded. So I brought my unit down there one time. He took a recording of a Gaelic harp, ran it through the console, sounded beautiful,
Hmm.
into my unit, and simultaneously put it onto 2-inch tape. He played back his tape, and it sounded fantastic. Sounded great, really, really nice. He played my digital, and now he's going A B with the button on the console, and he looks back at me and says, "How much does one of those cost?"
Yeah.
And what it really came down to was that his 2-inch tape spinning at 30 IPS, I thought sounded better.
Hmm.
But the cost of maintaining that unit and the cost of tape and all that compared to what you could buy a PCM unit and a VHS recorder was a fraction. And I think that that's been the biggest change in music as time's gone on, is that
Hmm.
it's just gotten so inexpensive to be able to make music
Yeah. And I've
comparative to how it was.
I've been one for sure that has benefited from it, because
Yeah.
now there's actually recording toys that are semi-professional, if not totally professional, that I'm able to afford, and I'm very
Yeah.
thankful for it. That's why you know, obviously like the toys and the buttons and the knobs and the switches. So I've never been against
Well,
technology.
I love that audio console.
You do?
Oh yeah. I've
You've
I've
seen?
heard them. They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you do with one if you had one?
Well, I'd probably still keep the Soundcraft because I like the sound.
Yes.
There's a sound that this gives that you can't get, but I would just use the Soundcraft for tracking. I might consider mixing, going back to mixing through a console if I had something like that.
Really? Oh, that's good to know.
Maybe,
Because
maybe.
I can do three different things. I can just use the mixer with the tape machine. I
Hmm.
could just track through it to Logic,
Yep.
and I can mix hybrid or mix just on the console. But uh, I've been trying to figure out, how do I want to use this now that I have it? Because I realized how much faster I got in the box. I thought, what are you doing? This is insane, you know. But there's so many fun things to do with it. I was
Yeah,
missing.
I still live mixing. I love mixing with faders. I really
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
But the other console that I would consider, SSL makes an Origin.
Oh, right.
I saw those at AES, and I was playing around with that. They were passing signal through it,
That
and
would work
I was
nicely.
just messing around with that, and with the bus compressor, that they SSL bus compressor, and I was just having a ball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if this wasn't $30,000, I'd be thinking about it.
This has a built-in compressor too, but I realize everything coming from Logic is still way too hot. I have to
Yeah.
really turn it back so that this doesn't just catch too quickly, because there's no way to attenuate what's going into that mixer.
What comes out of my interface that goes into the console, I've been able to figure out as close as I can that it comes back, because the console, when you play things through it at 0, it's at about -18.
Right.
And that's what I've always recorded at. And when it comes back through the, because there's a pad at the top of each channel, and the I've got settings on there so that when it plays back, I kind of keep that unity.
Okay.
So what goes out into Pro Tools and plays back, it plays it back at the same volume.
You
So
keep
it's a
it
little bit
minus
of a
18,
balancing act. Yeah, about minus
basically.
18.
Okay.
And that, that translates to my tape machines and everything else. But then when I send clients home with stuff, I'll normally, instead of being DBFS, I'll go LUFS
Yeah.
and I'll give them minus 14 because that's Spotify.
Yeah.
And so now it's a little bit more of a broadcast level.
Nice.
Minus 18 is kind of quiet,
Definitely.
so, but the nice thing about recording at that level, and I've got my monitor controller because I have several sets of monitors that I own, and I can go back and forth. They're all balanced, so they play back at the same
Me too.
level.
Yeah.
I just hit the buttons. But the nice thing is that there's a dial on it, and I've got different settings that it's like, okay, if something's recorded minus 18, it's set here. So and I listen back at the same volume no matter what I'm listening to, Spotify minus 14, YouTube, things like that. So I've got little
Right.
marks on it. And now I'm listening back. So I'm not cheating myself thinking that something sounds better because it's louder.
Definitely not. Yeah. I didn't realize, I buy a lot of stuff used and I get a lot of endorsements for things just because I ask,
Mm-hmm.
and discounts on stuff. I hardly ever pay full price for anything. I didn't realize that this was 11 years old when I bought it.
It's
And the
okay.
gentleman who sold it to me probably knew that there was something wrong with the master bus, but I didn't. So while I was setting all this stuff up and learning how everything works and goes in and out, being digital and being analog and buying cables after cables after cables, I realized when I really got into trying to mix on here that when I put it up to 0, one level went completely sky high and the other one stayed beneath.
Wow.
And I felt like the stereo image not only was skewed, but like everything was collapsing weird and strange. And I took a video of it, played some sound samples, sent it to Audient and said, what's going on? And they said, oh, sounds like you need a new master bus card. So they sent me this giant thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I took apart the mixer and resoldered this thing in and stuff. And now they're all balanced and stuff. And I haven't been down here since. I haven't been trying it out to see how much better it is. And I
Well,
think that would probably
you
explain everything.
you posted, I saw that you were doing that. And I was waiting for the video of you kind of like, okay, here I am taking the back off. And I was waiting. I was like, all right, how much soldering is she going to have to do? And, all that kind of
Very
stuff.
little.
But,
The only soldering I had to do was on the mic, on the talkback mic that was built in. And I don't even use that because who am I talking to? Hello, me?
when I used this console live, we pulled out the channel and I disconnected the talkback mic because people would lean on the console and hit the button. And if you push on the talkback mic when it's live, that's bad.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So it works now, but because I resoldered it, but we would always, it's like, well, let's disconnect these things.
I was very concerned trying to think about taking it apart. It's very interesting how this whole thing is put together with taking off the sides and things just open up. But basically, it was just a couple of those ribbon cable things.
Yeah.
Just the 3 wires for the XLR. That was the only thing.
I can't believe that it doesn't probably sound like worlds better.
Yeah, it probably does. I will find out today. And now the other thing I need to fix is I had gotten 2 channels of a Neve VR.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of buttons that don't stay depressed. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
my friend Steven Weber over at Power Station was saying, oh no, my friend Brett here probably has some extra buttons he can send you. But I have one preamp that goes wacky. So I'm in the middle of singing and I've got a dialed in sound that is just wonderful. And then all of a sudden it goes super overdrive without you wanting it to. And it's like, yeah, I have to do a test for him now to figure out what
almost sounds like something's heating up. Does it have tubes?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, almost sounds like, maybe the tube's overheating.
I haven't opened it up to see what's inside, but yet
once it gets to a certain temperature or something like that, after it's been on for a while, it freaks out.
That's what it sounds like.
Maybe.
So I got to see if I have the cojones to see if I want to take that apart and see if I can put those new switches in and put that in. It's like, I've never had any electronics courses either.
I mean, you'll figure it out. It's,
Disconnect this, reconnect that.
the number one thing I think that stops us from doing things is the fear that we're going to fail.
Oh yeah, I definitely try things. I'll take guitars apart and all kinds of stuff and learn and
Well, if
figure
you
it
can do
out.
that, you can fix the switches.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, Bruce, this has been super fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was fun to do.
Anything else you want to share? Because you've got a lot of cool experience there. I really enjoyed what you had to say.
I guess the only thing that I would say more, if there's anybody that's listening to this that, wants to do this for a living that's younger, and you teach a lot of students. I don't know how many of your students would actually watch your show here.
My
But
show.
yeah, well, it
I'm
is.
talking for my own benefit here.
It's your talk show.
My talk show.
But, it's not something that gets handed to you that happens overnight. It's kind of like people that are in, the entire entertainment business, whether it's television or movies or whatever. They're just, it's a throwback to the days where you just got to pay your dues.
Yeah.
And, you just go in, be respectful, speak when spoken to, and, just be willing to do, I mean, obviously within reason, be willing to do, what you're asked to do, but simple things like being on time.
Yeah.
If you promise somebody that you're going to do something, do it.
Right. Keeping your word.
Everybody is going to realize when you first start out that you might not be, the best engineer on the planet or the best mixer, even though you might think you are. Trust me, you're not. But, in time, you get better and you get better and you get better and you get better. And eventually, you start to realize that, okay, I've seen this set up before, something very similar to this, and I know what will work in this. And you just get faster because you've been around it. And in time, you'll get your big break. Now, here was my big break. I was working in the studio. I was the assistant. I was pretty much doing what I was told. David had this guy that was coming in. He was a songwriter, guitar player, piano player, and it was time to do vocals. David comes in and says, because he had just gotten a new girlfriend about a month before. And I can't remember the night of the week, but there was this thing that they always did this one night of the week, and it was the night this guy wanted to record vocals. So he said, do you think you'd be okay handling this session by yourself tonight? Because we want to do our thing.
Yeah.
And they said, sure. Guy shows up and he's like, oh, Dave's not here. And I'm like, no, it's just going to be you and me tonight. And we recorded. He had an Atari tape machine, big Viking console, and things went off pretty flawlessly. We went back and forth between two tracks and got, we kind of bouncing things back and forth. So when we got to the final take, we sat down, and listened to it. So it was more or less comping to tape, if you want to call it that. And he was thrilled. And he went back and he told Dave, he's like, yeah, working with Bruce was great. Well, yeah, suddenly I was doing my own sessions.
That's fantastic.
So it wasn't anything that was pre-planned. It was just luck of the draw, but there it was.
Well, Dave knew. He knew he could probably trust you.
He knew I was going to blow anything up, So,
yeah.
But that's, you just have to wait your turn and it'll happen because people move around. People get a better gig and all of a sudden you come to work and you're like, yeah, well, so-and-so is not here today because she just took a job elsewhere. And so now all of a sudden there's an opening. Do you want to give this a try? You want to step up?
Wow. So great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, you've worked with really cool people. You've got a cool setup. You've been doing all your own music as well. It's like, how could we be even happier? This is just so good. It's so cool to be us.
Yeah. Yeah. There
It's
you
so
go.
fun. I mean, when you count your blessings and when you think of everything you've ever really always wanted, I mean, even for me, there's so many friends that I knew went to Berkeley together or uh, knew of who dropped out of Berkeley when I was a student, and they went off and built careers as performers and recording
Hmm.
artists and such. And so many of them are coming back now saying, "You did it right all along. We want to teach at Berkeley." And I'm like, "What?" Because we all think the grass is greener someplace else, but when you think about how much freedom I've always wanted and time to work on my own stuff and the ability to be able to record and make all my own music as often
Right.
as I have, especially since I stopped moving and changing locations physically, it's been exactly what I've always wanted all along. And I know people who've been out on the road forever with other people going, one of these days I'm going to be able to make my first album, So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what they chose or how much money they're making, they're all still wishing for something else. And you've got to turn around and look at what you got and what you thought your original things were, because a lot of times you've hit those goals and you don't realize it because evolution keeps you moving forward and there are new goals and you keep thinking you haven't
Right.
gotten
Right.
anywhere yet, but there's no get there to get there. Nobody tells you that. So I
Well,
want to get there.
I think for me, one of the things that I've always been able to take away with this is that I think I've had some positive influences on, other people, younger artists that have come in that watch me mix and now they're doing it themselves.
That's cool.
Or, in the case of like my daughter, she's professional down in Nashville
So nice.
and she's working on an album and stuff like that. And, you know, my parents were both very, very talented. My mother sang with Guy Lombardo. So I'm always constantly joking that, I'm positive
Wow.
proof that talent skips a generation because you went from my mother to my daughter and they both blow me away completely. And, but I think that, my daughter being around the studio and microphones and all that kind of stuff, I think, that had a certain amount um, of influence to make her want to make music. And, we gave her
Definitely.
first guitar when she was like 13 or whatever age it was. And, she would always be playing mine. But when she got her own, then she really took off.
That's sweet.
And she made her first album with uh, a guy that we used to work with, Meatloaf. She made her first album at 16.
That's fantastic.
And you know, I, I don't know where you started, but I played in all these really, tiny little coffee houses and then beer smelling bars and all that kind of stuff. My daughter's first gig was in front of 8,000 people.
Oh my God.
Yeah, imagine that.
Like the Newport Jazz Festival or
It
something.
was at in Syracuse at a thing called the Balloon Festival.
Nice.
With hot air balloons, and they had bands out there. And they get about a crowd of about 8,000 people, and so it was like,
Wow.
okay, here she is. And I'm like looking around, going like, wow, I don't really know if I've ever actually even ever played in front of an audience this big.
I did for 7 and I was so excited it felt like smoke was coming out of my ears.
Yeah,
And thankfully it was with a Beatle band where our first 3 songs were always the same 3. So it was
yeah.
always I saw her standing there into I Want to Hold Your Hand into All My Lovin'. And in the middle of All My Lovin', I'm doing the triplets and I'm thinking to myself, why are all these people here? Is McCartney landing in a helicopter or something? Like, what's going on with this festival? And wait a minute, what song are we playing? Am I with the drummer? It was just like, get back in your body. And meanwhile, the
Yeah.
triplets are just sailing along. And I'm going,
Yep.
thank God these first 3 songs are the way we always start this show because I'm like
Yeah.
out to lunch.
Well, and that sets you off having that choreographed like that because you settle in and the whole rest of the show is going to be great because all the
Yeah.
jitters are gone.
Yeah. And you get used to bad sound. Like, hey, these are some good sound questions I should ask you since you've been doing live sound. When I've talked to some teachers at Berkeley, friends of mine who have done a bunch of live sound, and I've said, I sing quietly on stage. I don't know how they ever got Suzanne Vega's voice out above the band whispering
Hmm.
because I used to be able to hear her at the shows doing some of the quietest things. And my bands, I have trouble and they can't turn me up because the more they turn me up, the more they turn up the band. coming through my mic. So even if they do multi-track recording of the live, they can't believe how much crap is on my vocal mic because it's the whole band, because their
Yeah.
monitors are so darn loud. And if you're working with folks who have hearing loss and you don't, and you want things nice and quiet and they're blasting everything, I'm like using noise canceling headphones and earplugs upon earplugs and big minus 45 dB on top of that.
Yeah.
And then I'm completely isolated because I just hear my guitar and my voice and everything else is far away. But with all those setups and all those shows we did, I used to get used to, oh yeah, this is about as much low end as I normally hear in my headphones, and this is comfortable to sing over for this. And still they had trouble putting me out over the band.
Well, most club acts have a monitoring system where, it's a bunch of wedges on the floor, and the only thing that comes back in those wedges is
The whole
the
band.
vocal,
Oh, just the vocal?
the vocal mics.
That would have been
They're not
nice.
putting guitars and things like that in the wedges because it's like you have your amp right behind you. Why do
Right.
you need to have that in your wedge?
You don't, yeah.
Now, with the bigger stages, almost everybody would get two wedges, and then there's side fills. The drummer has
Exactly.
his own system back there. The lead
Yeah.
singer would get a wedge right in the front and two wedges on the sides, and they would all get their own personalized mix. So, what do you want to hear? I want to hear the bass. I want to hear my guitar. I want to hear a little bit of the drums, but don't kill me with the drums.
Yeah.
I want to hear the singer, or whatever, but my background vocals got to be louder than the lead singer because I want to hear myself. It's that type of thing. So once you get that dialed in and everybody gets what they want, they're living kind of like in their own little world. It's kind of like, and then in-ears is the same thing.
Sure.
Everybody gets their own mix. It's like working
Yeah.
in a studio, but you're
Because
live.
Because you have to shape your sound. You have to shape what you're playing. You have
And
to have
everybody's
that.
got a different opinion what sounds good.
Exactly. And you've got to feel comfortable to do your thing.
So, but unless you have a monitoring console that's got the matrix that's able to do that,
Mm,
then, most local bands don't have that type of a system, so they can't. It's mainly just, fold back monitors are your vocals, because that's the one thing that's not, loud enough on stage,
mm,
and anything that's amplified. Like if you make a board tape of something like that,
it's terrible.
anything going through the console that's being amplified, like the drums, are the loudest things in the mix, and the vocals are usually very loud in board mixes.
Yeah.
The guitars are usually
Drums
quiet
are
because you don't have to reinforce them as much because they're
drums
just
and
loud.
vocal. I used to bring a little Alesis mixer, split my guitar signal, put it in my headphone mix, put it out to the front, and then I'd also have my mic.
Hmm.
And just be able to dial in what I needed from those two things. But the singer would come over playing a tambourine. All of a sudden, I'm like overwhelmed with tambourine in my ear. I'm going, "What's going on?" I'm almost falling over from the sound in my headphones,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
disoriented with a tambourine. And I realize he's playing near my mic. It's like, get away from my mic with that tambourine. It's so funny. Yeah. When we played on bigger stages, it was great because then you could hear the drums and hear everything, and everybody had their own space, basically.
Well, with the bigger stages, it helps keep everybody, playing in tune and in time, because sometimes you can't hear the guitar player all on the other side of the stage. Neil Young tells an interesting story about the first band that he was in there with, Stephen Stills, Hello, Mr. Soul, and that group,
Mm,
Buffalo Springfield. And he said they were playing such huge stages that they had gone from being this little band to being this huge band. He said that if you sat in the middle in the audience, you'd hear that the guitar player on the left was slightly flat, and the guitar player on the right was slightly, sharp, because they didn't have tuners back then. Everybody tuned by ear.
Oh God.
And then the bass player was, wherever. And then you had drums, and then so the person in the middle singing to that has got to figure out, all right, so what's the actual note I'm supposed to be singing to here?
Oh, that's terrible.
And welcome to the world of big stages, because neither guitar player could hear each other. They were so far apart.
Oh God, that's awful.
Yeah.
I know one of my bass players used to always say, "Well, I like everything coming out of the mix in the monitors so that I can just play bass. That's like, of course you do, because nobody else is in the bottom.
Yeah.
Nothing is competing with you. You're down there by yourself. You can hear everything and you can hear how you fit in. It's like, but everything I'm doing is mid-range, and all the vocals and the keyboards and the guitars and everybody's coming through the mid-range, and I'm going, I can't hear myself to shape the sound. And all these guys are singing so loud. So yeah, I just had to get
Yeah. I mean, as a matter of course, before they even come out to do sound check, I would always turn up in the bass players' wedges. Obviously, they want their own instrument to a certain extent, but I would always give them just kick and snare.
yeah.
Because it's like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I find the pocket. This is what I'm going to be playing to. And then obviously the singers are always in everybody's wedges. But, you know, everybody's different. There was one drummer, because I did BB King a bunch of times. And there was one drummer with BB King that he really wanted his hi-hat like loud in the mixes,
Wow.
because, he used it as it wasn't just keeping time. I mean, he used it to embellish,
Mm,
and he really needed to hear, all the things he was doing with it and how it sounded. So, I mean, it
wow.
was the only drummer that I've ever had. It was always telling me, turn up the hi-hat, turn up the hi-hat. But it's like, okay,
Wow. That's
yeah,
something. And at Berkeley, they have a lot of classes where folks are doing sound reinforcement and learning. So they're working all the different performance spaces we have there.
yeah.
And I was doing another performance clinic at the David Friend Hall, and one of my students was up there doing sound, and he was a singer-songwriter as well.
Hmm.
So I'm asking for certain things in my monitor, and he's not getting it, not getting it. He doesn't understand what I'm asking for. And I said, okay, you come down and hear what's going on here.
Hmm.
And so I sang and played, and he went, oh, and he went right upstairs and fixed it, because it was like, you're a singer-songwriter. The voice has to be a little bit more clear and a little bit louder than the guitar. I don't want the
Yeah.
high end of the guitar to be competing with my voice. And so often when I've done live shows, if I show up with an electric guitar, they turn the electric guitar way down. It's like I'm singing with nothing. Whereas if
Right.
somebody shows up with an acoustic, they know what to do. They're so afraid that I'm going to like blast them out like with electric guitar stuff. And it's like, no, I'm just using it as an acoustic, but it's electric.
Right. Right. Well, when we did big festivals where you had, like 10 bands playing all day long, and there's no sound check, they're just line checks,
Yes.
where you put your headphones on and make sure that all the mics are working. My method was always that I'd bring all the faders down, um, maybe 20% down from where they were going to be at max.
Hmm.
And the band would come out, and the first thing that I would get is the vocal and the bass, so that they were living together in a space where it's like they're right out front. Then I bring up the drums. Now I have bass, drums, and a vocal. Now I have a song.
Nice.
And then everything else would come up. And by the time we got to the, halfway through the first song, I'd have things mostly relatively, where they were going to be, pretty close to it. But that first, you know, 30 seconds to a minute of that first song was usually, let's make sure that everybody can hear the singing. The bass has got to be where it needs to be, blend in, and and the drums a lot of times were the same drum kit over and over again.
Right.
So
Hopefully.
those would all be down. You take all the, you know, 20, 30 tracks of instruments you have, but then you drop it down to a submix. So
Hmm.
the drums would be just two faders in your right hand. So
Nice.
because I would drop them down slightly, then I could very quickly just blend them up. That's, like 5 seconds. Then I start moving guitars and keyboards up, and it's like, okay, we got a mix now. And it would come pretty quickly.
That's smart.
And I've heard other people that would, you know, they do the whole band first, then do the vocal, and everybody in the audience is like, I can't hear them. And it's like you're already setting yourself up for people to yell at you,
Right.
because you're not mixing it right. It's like, unless it's a jazz band, then you pick, what's the prominent instrument? Is it
Yes.
a trumpet? Is,
Right.
whatever the star is, you got to put that out from the very beginning, from the first note. That's got to be right out there. It
Yeah.
has to be,
And
because
it's the
that's what
same.
people paid for.
Yeah. Same for a mix, because you put on a Pat Metheny album, it's a Pat Metheny album. You put on
Yeah,
Stevie Nicks, it's Stevie Nicks. I mean,
I worked with him. He was great.
oh yeah. I almost went on tour with him. In fact, talking about different sides of microphones and stuff, I have a video on my YouTube channel where it's my actual Pat Metheny audition
Hmm.
when he was looking for a rhythm guitarist to go out on the Secret Story tour. And I had all these effects and I had all this nice acoustic pickup and stuff. And I couldn't wait to use all these cool things. And I listened, put the headphones on and went, no, that's just an acoustic guitar with a condenser mic. So I got rid of all that stuff, put out my best condenser, which was probably a 414 at the time, and
Uh-huh.
put the headphones on, listened to his record. And it was probably on my 1/2 inch 8 track, putting the song in from the CD. And well, the CD wasn't out yet. I had I think I had a cassette of it or something. But anyway, I played along with his album. And as I played the part, because I was figuring out the exact voicings with the exact rhythms to play his song, It's For You, I just angled my guitar so that it sounded like I was playing with his tone and his touch and the
Hmm.
amount of distance to the mic. And it was probably off to the side to get the right tone because I wasn't going to bother with EQ and stuff on my little Tascam mixer.
Right,
And I
right.
recorded the part, played it that way, just standing in that position. And when I mixed it in and played it for a friend of mine, she plays keyboard. She said, "Are you even in there? If somebody's screening these, they're not even going to believe that you're playing because you've mixed it too good." She said, "You better
Yeah.
give them a separate mix on the cassette where you're on one side and the song is on the other." And so that's what I did. I panned my guitar from center to the right and his album from center to the left so that they could really know for sure that this was a submission. And
Yeah.
he loved it. He loved the fact that it was the right voicings with the right kind of playing, with the right kind of touch, with the right kind of sound, with the right kind of blend. And it was like, yeah, this would be a good match for me. But then by the time they went to Europe, they're like, oh, we have too many bodies. We don't want to pay for another person in Europe. So
Mm.
and they picked the first time around was throughout the US and playing on Jay Leno and all those shows and stuff. And they picked the person who had touring experience and could also play trumpet. So it was like, oh
That's
well,
great.
yeah. But it was good to come that close and to have him and Steve Rodby in my other house, just hanging out in my so-called studio, then playing with them for 2 hours. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
Well, you definitely got chops. There's no question about that. I don't play the guitar with the proficiency that you play with, but
Well, yeah.
it's one of those things where when I listen to you play and the music, it's really enjoyable. You don't play the types of things that you know it's not always what you would expect. It's like oh, listen to that. That's different. That's
Oh,
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Probably because I have so many different influences than most people. I didn't realize I was such a singer-songwriter in those days. I thought I was guitar player, but I'm not one of those gunslinging guitar players. My
Yeah.
favorite two guitar players are like George Harrison and James Taylor.
Mhm.
So they're pretty low octane as far as force and
Yeah, but
all that kind of stuff.
James
The
James
taste,
Taylor, he's unbelievable.
I know, and those two are Pat Metheny's favorite guitar players. So it's like Pat
Yeah.
Metheny saw A Hard Day's Night 25 times. He told me he was like, I love the Beatles. I was like,
Well,
well,
it's funny because people love to malign George and Ringo, like
oh
as
sure,
not being good players.
I know.
And I'm like, George Harrison, if you take his hooks out of
Mhm.
those songs and you play them, they're not those songs anymore.
Yep.
And then I saw a thing recently where Dave Grohl was talking about Ringo,
Yeah.
and he said that we put a really great drummer that had never heard these Beatles songs, and we played him the Beatles music and said, "Go ahead and play drums."
Play along.
And the guy just started flashing away and doing all this stuff, and he's like, it sounded completely wrong. It's
Absolutely.
like without Ringo, that band sounds completely different,
Oh, it's like, you need
completely different.
four tires on a car. Absolutely. Because I was in a Beatles tribute band that toured for 13 years and we played this one gig where the drummer couldn't come and a sub came in just to save the gig. And the three of us are up front doing our Beatle imitation and everything, playing exact note for note, singing the right harmonies and doing everything that we always did. But without Ringo, the thing fell on its face. And I thought, oh my God, if this is how this band's going to continue, I'm out of here because this sounds worse than Beatles GB. You know, it was
Yeah.
absolutely horrible,
Yeah.
like you say. And George used to always say that, like, how many Beatles does it take to screw in a light bulb? 4, because it's like the 4 wheels of a car,
Yeah.
You take one wheel off, it's not the Beatles anymore. And they always
Right.
say a band is only as good as its drummer.
Well, and I think one of the best parts about that band, and I know that there were times later on when, Paul would try to tell everybody, you need to play this part or you need to play this part or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that they all had a certain amount of freedom to come up with their own part.
Yes.
There wasn't somebody, that was writing it and saying, okay, the song goes like this and this is the only way it goes. They basically were just like, all right, well, here's the song. I played it for you on an acoustic guitar. Let's hammer it out. And apparently they would do that very quickly, like 20 minutes.
Mm,
Then they'd record it.
I know, it's pretty
Like,
astounding.
that's pretty genius if you really think about it.
They really were quick to think on their feet, kind of a thing. And then they would play it as many times as they have to get all 2 of them, 3 of them, or 4 of them to record at once and get the best feeling
Yeah.
take. It's just fascinating what they did and how they did it. Oh man, we could talk about them forever. That's like a whole other chat we could do just on the Beatles.
Yeah. Well, that whole era, you go back to, the Beatles and Stones and all that. I mean, the whole recording process was a lot quicker and everything, in large part because they're recording 8 tracks. I know they bounce things back and forth and stuff like that, but
Mm,
when they recorded it was just a lot more quick and a lot more expedient than it is now.
yeah. Well, now things have gotten a little bit maybe too tedious. Like that's what I was getting at when I was saying before with people recording live through an analog console. They weren't thinking about low pass this, low pass that, high pass this, do this, do this, do this. They were like capturing a live performance. The mastering engineer probably took care of that, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And we're all playing with all these tiny little plugins, getting so minute details and, you know, maybe missing out on the performance half the time.
Well, and that's the very first thing I said about, early on in this conversation was, it's all about performance.
Yeah. Great song,
And,
great performance.
capturing that performance, if you want to capture it live, that's great. Or in the course of, multi-track recording, it's still all about capturing performances. If the performances are good,
Mm,
it's going to sound good.
yeah, you're so right.
Even the raw tracks will sound good.
Yeah, absolutely. This has
So,
been a really fun hang for me.
yeah, it's been fun. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, Bruce. We should do it again, just talk Beatles or something like that.
Oh, no, I've already put way too much of my face on YouTube. Nobody's ever going to want to hear me again.
I don't know about that. This was very cool and informative. So thank you
It
so
was fun.
much.
It was fun.
Yeah, very
Thanks
cool.
for having me.
Well, thanks for
You need to
jumping
give
on.
this show a name.
Well, I was calling it Creative Conversations.
Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
That's good.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
Cool.
you are super creative, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Let's talk soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.